Hi and welcome back. Now today's project is continuing with the XT600. The forks have been leaking for a little while now. It's time to do something about that. Since I'm going to take them apart completely in order to renew the fork seals, it seems a good time to uprate them as well. Standard forks are great, but they're really more designed for an off-road use. With the extra weight of fuel in the tank, now I've got the bigger touring tank on there, they're a little bit soft and squishy when it comes to hard braking and stuff, which you're going to do on road, not so much off-road. So we'll see what's like, but I bought some Wirth progressive springs which should stiffen up the front end, so let's see how that works. See the state of the fork legs, the stanchions and the fork seals, because you've got the covers on them which are quite firmly attached top and bottom, and the top one will slide a bit, but can't really see very much. But we've got oil seepage here, so for sure the oil seal has gone. How you raise the front wheel up is going to depend on what you've got. Now I'm using this jack. You could use one of the special off-road bike stands, similar. I've taken the bash guard, whatever you would call it on these, off so that I can jack directly onto the engine. The rear piece of wood is supporting on the bash guard mounts, and the front is supporting on the centre part of the engine, which should be, given the engine is a stressed part of the frame, that should be secure enough. But really you're going to have to find your own technique depending on what you've got at hand. So let's look at fork leg removal. Now, held on by pinch bolts here and pinch bolts here. However, to remove the fork springs in oil, we will need to remove this cap nut here. But at the moment, you can't get onto it. I could use a spanner, but there's a better answer. So inside the fork tube we have a spacer and a collar for the spring, and we have the spring, which is obviously, this is a bit of an oily process. It's a progressive spring, and if you could smell this, it stinks, which is a good sign the oil is well overdue for changing. I'm just letting it drain a bit down the spring before I take it out. If it smells of rotten eggs, that's sulfur. Sulfur associated with sulfuric acid. When you heat oil, like for example engine oil, it produces, one of the byproducts of excessive heat is sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid, if you let it sit in your engine, for example, the engine sits for a few months, it can etch your bearings, it can etch into the steel. So bad news all round. And so if you can smell sulfur, it's probably been too long since it was changed. This is what we're changing over to. It's a Wirth fork springs. As you can see, it's the same length as the previous OEM spring plus spacer. Now the OEM spring is still within the minimum spring length, so it's still perfectly usable, it's within factory specs. but you can see the Wirth spring takes up the whole fork leg, and it's much thicker coils. If we just compare these coils here, you can see the OEM spring is much thinner, much softer. This one's much more heavy duty, and as I say, it's all spring. There is no spacer at the end, so you can see they're both progressive. So that's what we're changing it to. Should give us a much stiffer action. It's a good thing, in my view, and good practice, when you're taking this apart, to put everything down in the order it came apart. And in the orientation it came apart. So this goes in here, so I'm putting it this way down. The same will be true of the seals when they come out. I will be putting them down in a specific way, so I know which way they go back on, and I'm not then sitting there trying to put it back together in a week's time thinking, wonder how that worked. Which way round did it go? The next stage is one people seem to find challenging, because we have to remove this bolt in the bottom of the fork leg. The problem is that this bolt will tend to just spin when you turn it and try and undo it, particularly if the person who's put it in has followed Suzuki's instructions, or Yamaha's instructions in this case, and use Loctite. That to be put in the vise and tapped with a hammer to loosen it off, because I think it had been Loctited in there, but now it's been done. Now what will tend to happen now is, unless you're very lucky, it will just keep on rotating and never come out. Now at this point, people start to panic, and if you look on the forums, there are threads where people suggest all sorts of fuckwittery to resolve this. If you feel tempted at this stage to resort to bodging, call a friend, get him round and smack you around the face until you come to your senses. This is a really easy thing to fix. You just got to know what you're doing. Yamaha charge an extortionate amount of money for the special tool that will allow you to do this. Well, I think it's an extortionate amount of money for a 27mm nut, because a 27mm nut is all you need. If you do a lot of them, you might be tempted to buy one. Why not? If you have access to a welder, then a 27mm nut or an M18 bolt. M18 tends to be associated with 27mm, and a socket welded to either will be your perfect special tool. Yamaha use them on a number of different models. The FJs use the same system, so it'll be useful for somebody somewhere, even if you never use it again. Alternatively, for 27mm nuts, something like Landover wheel nuts should do the job, and a piece of M18 threaded bar. Lock two nuts together at each end so that one can be used in the fork, one can be used to put your spanner or whatever onto. Job done. Personally, I favour a slightly cheaper and, well, not necessarily cheaper, but a similar cost route anyway, and one I'm more liable to find in my toolbox. So I lost a bit of film where I showed the special tool. So basically, the top of the damper tube is a 27mm socket, just like that, with a tube extending at the bottom. That's, so you know, if you had that's basically what the damper tube looks like inside the forks. The top of that is a 27mm socket. So what you need is a 27mm nut, but what I use is a box spanner, a 23mm box spanner, because a 23mm box spanner has an external size of 27mm. into the socket. So then you just need a way of attaching that. Well, this is a 22mm, which means it fits a 26mm socket, which will, this one's a bit of a tight fit, but it will go in there. And then you just need some extensions, and maybe another one if you need it, to reach down inside the fork leg and undo it. If you don't have a 26mm socket, then you can use another box spanner inside of here, which is what I actually used because I forgot I had a 26mm socket, with a 22mm socket on the bottom. You can improvise, but that's all you need. Is a 20mm, 7mm, a 23mm box spanner, external size, 27mm, job done, and it's a couple of quid. With a special tool of your choice inserted and locked into place, then it's just a question of undoing. I think this has definitely been Loctited in, it's really stiff. So this one's probably never been apart since the factory. There we go. One Allen bolt. Now another reason for not squashing this backwards and forwards and using other bodgery is there's a plastic lock piece in the bottom here that if you smack this fork down, you will tend to damage it. In use it never goes all the way down because To reinstall, you need the slide here, which is a bushing. In theory this should be new. You need your oil seal. This definitely should be new, installed with the numbers facing upwards, and on top of that the dust seal, again, should be new. Nothing else, this one must be new. Now this one I haven't got a driver that will fit down it because it's got a very high neck here. I haven't got an adapter to get in here, so I'm going to tap it in gently with a punch. It needs to go down so that it's flush with a metal surface you can see. Oh, I can see in here, but you can't. So that it's flush with that metal surface, and it forms a bush that this will slide through. Lubricate the inside of the oil seal. Yamaha recommends a lithium based grease. You have to be careful with greases. Just because you fancy a particular grease doesn't mean it's the right one. Some greases don't dissolve in oil. That means if any of this grease gets down into the fork oil, you could end up with a clot of grease which will block up one of the smaller apertures inside and make your forks not work properly. So use the recommended grease. If you're not sure, don't use it. So, number tied upwards. So refilling a 10 weight oil is what Yamaha recommend. And it's done without the spring to a depth from the top of the fork tube of 155mm. So I've marked that on a zip tie which will sit in there and allow me to measure. So it's just over half. It's 568 millilitres I think, so it's just over half the can. You need to work it in. Till you can't hear that air any longer. Measure with it fully at the bottom. Needs just a little bit more. Perfect. So spring goes in the same way round the other one was in. You may wish to raise the tube before you put this in, stop the oil splashing out. Now the standard tube with spacer sat slightly below the surface, so there was very little pressure. This one's sitting slightly above. Spring collar. Now for this one we will need a little something to put a bit of pressure on. What I recommend is that you push down and screw the tube on rather than the other way around. Allow it to find its own thread. It's a very fine thread, it will damage very easily. Now before I finish that, what I didn't do is just to lubricate the washer, so I'll do that now. O-ring seal in here. Just want to make sure that it finds its own place as this comes in. The oil isn't so much to seal it as to allow that O-ring to slip and be free as this comes up to it. Otherwise it could drag and be distorted and then wouldn't seal. Grease isn't sealing it, the O-ring is sealing it. Just nip it shut. Job done. With the top cap torqued up, make sure you put your gaiter on, slide it all the way to the top. They should be level at the top here. Make sure it's exactly the same as the fork the other side. Whatever they feel like, they should feel like the same both sides. If they're not, adjust until it is. Retighten these bolts here and torque them up, and that's it, job done. All we have to do is reclip the gaiter on and put the wheel back in and reassemble all the things we took off. Well, thanks very much for watching. Apologies for the loss of a couple of clips there. Camera error on my account, I'm afraid. It seems that I posted, or I clicked on the record button once too many times, with the result it missed the bit I wanted to film, and then when I was finished I hit what I thought was a stop, actually was a start. So the first one I hopefully covered. Now if you're unclear, to remove the actual seals from the stanchion, you just need to actually hold the lower and the upper and just pull the inner stanchion up, and it will gradually tap those seals out of the lower leg. Don't smack it hard, just be gentle, and they will slowly tap their way out, and then they'll come out, and then you can just slide them off the stanchion once they're actually out, and you've got the stanchion and the fork leg in the two parts. So I hope that's useful, and if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So again, thanks very much for watching.